Hola everyone, JV Throws here back with another video. If you don't already know, Six Flags Over Texas is my home park. I've been going to this theme park ever since I was 6 years old, and I've officially ridden every ride in the park, which includes every roller coaster in Six Flags Over Texas. And as you know, this week is Thrill Week, the week I'm celebrating 1,000 subscribers, where I'll make videos related to me. So I got an idea. Since all of you have been wondering what's my favorite coaster at Six Flags Over Texas, I decided for Thrill Week I'll be ranking every coaster in the park. In total, there are 13 roller coasters in Six Flags Over Texas, and I'll be ranking all of them, from worst to best. And let me tell you, some of you will leave this video very triggered, so just a heads up. Before I get into the rankings though, I would like to say, if you're new here and you like my content, be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell to know when new videos come out of my channel. With 1,000 subscribers, I'll be upping my content even more, and I have lots of great videos planned for the future, so you won't want to miss any of them. Anyways, let's get into today's video. While Six Flags Over Texas does need some new good coasters, and Aquaman Powerwave doesn't count, their current lineup is actually pretty solid, because while it does need some help, it isn't as bad as some other theme parks. And I'm actually very grateful to have this lineup for Six Flags Over Texas. But even if the lineup is pretty good, there are still some bad coasters and some good coasters. So it's time to release my rankings of the best coasters at Six Flags Over Texas. Before I get into the first ranking, I'm going to issue a trigger warning, because you will get triggered. Anyways, let's start off with number 13. No surprise here, but number 13 is Wile E. Coyote Canyon Blaster. This is the kiddie coaster at Six Flags Over Texas, and it's last on the list. It's not because it's bad or anything. In fact, it's one of the better kiddie coasters. But compared to the other coasters in the park, Canyon Blaster definitely won't overtake any of them. Although, I highly suggest you ride this coaster, especially the young coaster enthusiasts. This is the first coaster I've ridden in Six Flags Over Texas, and it gives off some great memories and nostalgia. Plus, it's pretty fast for a kiddie coaster. Anyways, let's get on to the next spot. Number 12. Once again, the 12th spot goes to a kiddie coaster. This time, Mini Mine Train. Mini Mine Train is an aero mine train coaster that's very short, but the reason why it passes Wile E. Coyote Canyon Blaster is the intensity of this coaster. Don't let its small size fool you. It's actually very fast, gives a head chopper moment, and a pop of airtime at the end, especially if you're sitting in the last row. Plus, the coaster goes directly under Mr. Freeze's Reverse Blast, and if you're lucky enough to ride it when Mr. Freeze is launching, you'll get to see amazing views of the coaster as it goes right over your head. So honestly, it really deserved the 12th spot. Now let's move on to number 11. Number 11 on this list is rather shocking, to you, not me. Introducing La Vibra, an Intamin bobsled coaster. And yes, I said Intamin. The same people that created Velocicoaster created this monstrosity. Honestly, this coaster would have been number 13 on the list, but because it's a big coaster, I felt kinda bad placing it under two kiddie coasters. But that's how bad this coaster is, and I gave it some mercy by putting it in number 11, which it still doesn't deserve. Why is this coaster so bad, you may ask? Well, not only does it have bad capacity, but the ride experience makes the line waiting not worth it at all. First off, this coaster is very rough, and I mean rough, with capital everything. There's no seatbelts on this ride, and you sit very close to the ground, so when the coaster occasionally hits the ground when it's sliding down the track, which it does a lot, there's no way to brace yourself for the impact, and when you hit the ground, it's hard. Honestly, if an old person rode this attraction, they would break their hip. And if you think I'm exaggerating or that I'm weak, just look at this POV, and you'll see how hard the bobsled hits the ground, so hard that I almost dropped my camera. And may I add that my camera is very secure. This is literally the only POV of La Vibra I have. Since it's so rough, I don't want to risk losing my phone. Plus, it doesn't help that it's single file seating, because if you thought the wait times for an RMC Raptor was bad, it's worse for La Vibra. And they allow people to sit co-oply, meaning someone can sit on someone else's lap. And I highly advise that you don't do this, especially if you're a man, because it'll be just a ride full of pain. So in result, La Vibra is number 11, and if you disagree because you like it somehow, then that's your opinion. But in my opinion, it's this bad. Anyways, let's move on to number 10. Finally in the top 10, the 10th spot goes to Runaway Mountain. This is an aero mine train, one of the first of its type in the world. And the reason why it deserves a 10th spot is because how good this coaster is. It's not super impressive, but it's not mediocre either. First off, it has some great theming. It really does feel like a mine train in the Wild West. Then the coaster has some pretty quick pacing. There are some parts where you go really slow, but then all of a sudden you go lightning fast, all thanks to gravity and momentum. And for an old coaster, this ride holds up pretty good. Plus, there are some good head chopper effects, with a part where you dive right under the train tracks, and it's even more crazy when the train is going over at that time. And its finale is awesome. At the end, you go into a saloon full of mannequins, then all of a sudden, drop down into a tunnel which is pitch black. And may I add, the tunnel takes place entirely underwater, which is an awesome bonus, and if you're sitting last row, you really get yanked over that hill. So overall, Runaway Mine Train is a great mine train coaster, probably one of the best in North America, or maybe even the world, and it really deserves the 10th spot. Now let's move on to number 9. Taking the number 9th spot, we have the Joker. The Joker is, you guessed it, an S&S free spin. This coaster has been cloned all over Six Flags parks, or any theme park in general. Now while some people are annoyed for these coasters, I actually like them. Batman the Ride at Six Flags Fiesta Texas is actually really good and I love its theming, but this Joker just isn't that. It's just a standard cutout clone. I wouldn't be disappointed in this edition if it had some more theming. I wouldn't even care if it was called the Joker, if it had some more theming. At Six Flags Fiesta Texas, there's Umbrella Giga Discovery, the Joker Carnival Chaos, has a literal fun house in its queue line. And it's a flat ride. It doesn't even need theming, but they did it. So why couldn't this Joker have some fun house or something like that? And even its ride experience isn't as good compared to other S&S free spins. I honestly feel like this free spin doesn't even flip that much. One time I didn't even flip at all, I was just rocking. But Batman the Ride at Six Flags Fiesta Texas flips at least 3 times. And as to why it passes Runaway Mine Train, well, I still love how extreme it is, so I'll give it that. But anyways, it gets the 9th spot, and it just has to take it or leave it. Anyways, let's move on to number 8. In the 8th spot, we have Runaway Mountain. Despite its weird name, it's actually a really good coaster, and it's actually very unique. The reason why I say this is because the coaster takes place indoors. The entire layout of the ride is inside a building, which on the outside looks like a mountain. And sure, it's not that tall, but it's very fun. Its pacing is very quick, and with the added bonus of the entire ride being in complete darkness, it makes the coaster feel longer, and every turn becomes unexpected, because sometimes you'll never see what's next. And my favorite part is when it goes into a straight track before diving into another helix. This little dive always catches me off guard even though I know it's gonna happen. The only reason why it's not higher up on the list is that it's kind of bland. It is really missing some theming, and for a coaster themed inside a mountain, the actual ride itself has nothing to do with the mountain, which is really disappointing. One thing I think they should add is some more theming to the mountain inside, like maybe cover up the warehouse looking walls with rockwork, or maybe add sound effects that relate to a mountain somehow, like maybe in one turn you hear a bear roaring, but because it's dark you can't see it so it scares you. Or maybe at one drop you hear some rocks crumbling. Just make it play around with your senses, since without your eyes, you can imagine virtually anything inside, and the sound effects will just add to the sensory, and make you see things that aren't there. Overall messing with someone's mind, which is awesome. And if this happens, Runaway Mountain will definitely become a better coaster overall, and would be higher up on the list. But for now, it's at a good spot. Also, when they add stuff for Fright Fest and Holiday in the Park, they should stop being lazy, and not leave a creepy looking Yeti inside all the time. Just saying. Anyways, let's move on to number 7. This spot will definitely surprise you, as the number 7 spot is none other than Batman the Ride. Batman the Ride is the B&M invert at Six Flags Over Texas, a clone may I add. But usually on someone else's ranking for Six Flags Over Texas, this coaster is probably top 5 or top 3. But to me, it doesn't reach there at all. The coaster layout isn't bad. I love the inversions, I love the fast pace of the coaster, but why is the rank so low? The pain. First of all, Batman the Ride is pretty old. Not too old compared to other attractions in the park. But it looks very old because it hasn't been well kept. Some pieces of track are rusted, and the ride's now getting a habit of being more jerky and rough than smooth like it was before. In the past, Batman the Ride would be my top 3, but over time, it just gets worse and worse. First it was the headbanging, then it was the jerkiness, and now it's the sensation that your legs will get chopped off. And I'm not kidding, some of the turn and inversions actually feel like your legs are gonna get amputated. And after the ride, my feet would tingle sometimes. In result, it's not a pleasant experience, which explains why I don't like this ride anymore. And now, if Batman the Ride got taken down and replaced with another coaster, I wouldn't be surprised or sad at all. I actually kinda wish another coaster replaced this ride. Maybe like an RMC Raptor or Axis coaster, because there's better options than this roughness. And while some may say, oh, it's just intensity, they're meant to be intense. Well, no, not like this. Great White at SeaWorld San Antonio is way better than this, and it's an exact clone. Or Goliath at Six Flags Fiesta Texas, another clone of Batman the Ride, is also better than this. Both of those coasters are very smooth, fun, and very enjoyable, but for some reason, this Batman invert just hurts. So either Six Flags fix this attraction, or it'll get worse and worse every year, until eventually we'll see it get taken away. And this explains why this coaster is number 7. Anyways, let's get on to number 6. At number 6 we have Pandemonium, a family spinning coaster created by Gerstlauer. And yes, I know, a family coaster is surpassing Batman the Ride. How? Because this ride is fun. Don't get me wrong, I love my extreme coasters, and I mean I love them. But if I had to choose between an amputation simulator and a fun spinning coaster, the spinning coaster would win every time. There's never a time I had a bad experience at Pandemonium. Sure, there's times you don't spin, but that's because if you sit wrong, you don't spin. All you have to do is make sure that one side is more heavier than the other. That way the momentum catches on and you start spinning crazy. And if you get a Pandemonium experience where you spin non-stop, then Pandemonium gets even better. But the fact that Pandemonium is not constant is the reason why it's number 6 on this list. I prefer rides that give constantly good experiences. But if a ride gives sometimes bad experiences and sometimes good ones, then it's just mediocre. So overall, Pandemonium's a great coaster, but it has some flaws, and that's why it's number 6. So now, let's head on to the top 5 coasters at Six Flags Over Texas. Number 5. The 5th best coaster at Six Flags Over Texas is Judge Roy Scream. Judge Roy Scream is a PTC wooden roller coaster with a simple out and back layout. The coaster itself is outside of the park, which makes it hard to find sometimes. But if you find it, and you ride it, this coaster is actually very good. And I'm surprised that I'm saying this, but it's actually not a bad wooden roller coaster. If you remember, I used to hate this coaster. The reason why was because it's super rough, it's not fun, and you don't have a great experience. But after re-riding it, I officially changed my mind. Sure, it's rough, but you get used to it. And it actually gives some airtime, no matter where you sit, but mostly in the back. And even if the ride seems really sketchy, or just not pleasant, it's more fun to do it with your friends, because it's almost like if you're doing a challenge. And for little kids, it's actually a good coaster. Plus, it's the big icon of the park. Across the lake, seeing that wooden roller coaster go across, it just looks so cinematic, and it really fits in with the park. So if I call this coaster bad, I was wrong, and it really does deserve to be in the top 5. Number 4. The 4th best coaster at Six Flags Over Texas is Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast. Mr. Freeze is a premier launch coaster, one of the first they made, and it's a really good one. The coaster launches you from 0 to 70 miles per hour in under 3 seconds. You go up a top hat, curve, and then go up a 200-foot vertical spike, nearly reaching the top. And it's very consistent. It always runs fast, and sometimes it runs even faster. Also, this coaster has some really good theming, one of the best in the park. And like I said, it's one of the best launch coasters ever. There's only 2 of these type of coasters left in the entire world, and I'm really grateful that Six Flags Over Texas has this coaster. It's really great, and I highly recommend it. There's not one bad thing about this attraction at all, and it really deserves to be in the top 5. Number 3. In the 3rd spot, the bronze medal goes to Shockwave. Shockwave is a Schwarzkopf coaster, and one of the best, may I add. It has back-to-back vertical loops, and it's an airtime machine. No matter where you sit, the airtime is always there. and if you're in the back, you're basically in zero gravity. Now sure, it has its flaws, like at the last helix it's kinda rough, but it's one little problem against a really good coaster. Lots of people overlook this attraction, usually because they think it's old, but age really doesn't matter when it comes to this coaster. It's just as good as it was in the past, and it will always remain good for a long time. It was the first big coaster I've ridden, and it really does give me nostalgia. But it's not just that. Every time I ride it, it's always fun and exciting, almost like if it was my first time riding it. And going on this coaster with my friends, they always seem to enjoy this coaster. So next time you're at Six Flags Over Texas, don't miss out on riding Shockwave. But this classic coaster really deserves to be in the top 3. Number 2. Taking the silver medal, we have Titan. Titan is a Giovanola Hyper at Six Flags Over Texas, and only 2 of these coasters exist in the world. One without a helix and one with a helix. Luckily the one here in Texas is the one with the helix, which is really great. And while some of you may get mad at me for putting this coaster over Shockwave, hear me out. This coaster is amazing. The airtime hill after the turnaround is awesome. The helix is also awesome because the amount of G's you get in there. The G's are so strong, you will not be able to put your hands up on that part. And sure, it stops midway through, and is considered a buzzkill, but honestly it doesn't bother me, because sometimes the brakes isn't that hard, and I honestly think it being slowed down isn't too bad, because at that turn before you drop, you get a little sideways hang time, which is not an official term, but you know what I mean. And while yes, the elements are very drawn out, it's a hypercoaster, what do you expect? And I'm glad that my home park has this coaster. And if you said that Shockwave is better than Titan, I would also agree with you, because both of those coasters are really great. Titan can be third for all I care, but I only put it in second because the experience it gives and the amount of fun I have on this coaster. Not saying that Shockwave isn't fun, but Titan has a great experience and is very extreme. So I highly recommend this coaster, even if it's a buzzkill, and it definitely deserves top 3. Number 1. The best roller coaster at Six Flags Over Texas in my opinion is New Texas Giant. Taking the gold medal, we have New Texas Giant, the RMC Hybrid. The first RMC Hybrid, may I add. Because it was the first RMC Hybrid, it didn't have any inversions. But honestly, it doesn't matter, because this coaster brings the thrills the entire time, with lots of ejector airtime, fast-paced turns, and even the brake run can't stop this beast. It's always fun to ride, I always look forward to it. I love the airtime, and no matter where you sit, you always get a good experience. And if you sit last row, it's even better. There's not one thing that's bad about this coaster, and it really deserves number 1. So if you're at Six Flags Over Texas, you better not miss New Texas Giant, because it's such a great coaster, and people really need to talk more about this attraction. Just because RMCs have inversions doesn't make them better. This coaster beats Twisted Cyclone at Over Georgia, and Twisted Cyclone inverts. That proves how good this coaster is. So congratulations, New Texas Giant, for getting the gold medal. Anyways, that's all the coasters at Six Flags Over Texas, and that's my ranking. What did you think? Do you agree with some of the spots? Are some lower than they're supposed to be? Comment down below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you for watching. This is JV Thrills, signing out.